Call for the special council meeting of Corporation of the Townships of Brunel and Elgin Raglan. This first day of February 2023 at 6:01 p.m. Roll call. Councillor Mangs.
Yes.
Councillor Coghill. Here. Councillor Keller. Here. Councillor Coyle.
Here.
All councils present. We have a resolution that the council of the corporation of the township of Brunel, Lindau and Raglan adopt the agenda as submitted. Can I get a mover on that, please? Councillor Banks, seconded by Councillor Coghill. Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
Motion carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest of what's on the agenda?
Not by me.
I see none. The purpose of the meeting is to a presentation regarding owners. We have Akash Bandhan, I believe, who's going to join the meeting.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. So my camera doesn't seem to be working, even though my video says it's sharing. So that's okay. What I'll do is, if you'd like me to start my presentation, then I can share my screen so that you can see the presentation. Would that be okay at this time?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let me just share my screen and hopefully it says here, host disabled participant screen sharing. So somebody may need to make me a presenter in order for me to share my presentation.
We're working on it.
Perfect, no problem.
Should be at the bottom.
Should be in here.
Okay. Can you try it now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this will do it. Let me just give this a try.
Great. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Let me just take a look here. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess I'll just start off by saying thank you so much for having me here this evening. I understand that you are at this point looking for information on the OMERS pension plan and how it works. So I'm basically going to take you through the OMERS prospective employer presentation just to give you a high overview of the OMERS presentation. I guess at any time throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask me any questions. Now, I do have it in presentation mode on my screen, so please just speak up. Or I know that we have about an hour scheduled for the presentation. It probably won't take an hour, but I want to make sure that we do leave enough time at the end if you do have any questions that I can answer them for you. So
Okay.
that's perfect. So I will just get us started. So we're going to take a look at the agenda for this evening. So I'm going to provide everyone with information about who we are. So what do we do at OMERS? We're going to give you some fun facts about the pension plan. And then we're going to talk about how the OMERS pension plan works. Now, the OMERS pension plan is a defined benefit pension plan. And what that means is one day when a member retires, we use a formula in order to calculate their pension. And in that pension formula, we use their credited service time that they've paid into the OMERS pension plan and their earnings in order to calculate that pension. And there's also an ancillary benefit that we offer, which is the bridge benefit. And that's really kind of like a helping hand for those people who do retire before the age of 65. It's kind of like a helping hand they receive to the age of 65. And that's when it stops, because traditionally that's when your other government sources of income would start. So we're going to put that all together for you to show you how that might work in retirement. There's a couple of ways to also maximize your OMERS pension plan. So here we're going to talk about specifically interplan transfers and buying back past services. And then we're going to talk about some additional features. We do appreciate the OMERS pension plan is expensive, of course, for both members and employers, but you'll see that there are many benefits provided to you throughout the OMERS pension. So I'll give you a very high overview of that. And then we're going to talk about our investments. Now, the investments are a really very important part of the OMERS pension plan. You may be surprised to find out that for every dollar that you receive in retirement, 70 cents actually comes from our investments. So 15 cents comes from our contributions as active members. So like myself, working and paying into the OMERS pension plan. And then the other 15 cents are the matching employer contributions. So we're going to give you, again, a very high overview of the OMERS pension plan and how it works. And again, please, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask me, or we'll save them for the end of the presentation, and I'll be glad to answer them for you. So really at OMERS, who are we? We're one of the largest defined benefit pension plans in the public sector. So this is one of my favorite slides. And in the middle of the slide, you can see actually what our first pension report looked like over 60 years ago. Now, most of us as a part of the OMERS pension plan, we receive it electronically these days, but it just goes to show you how long we've been around. And we were founded in 1962 as a defined benefit pension plan for municipal workers in the province of Ontario. So I like to always mention we're 1 year older than Tim Hortons. But as of the end of December 31st, 2021, we had $121 billion in net assets. So that actually makes us the third largest pension plan in Canada. Some of you may be thinking who are in the top two spots. So in number 2 would be the teachers pension plan. And then of course, the largest one is the one that we all pay into as working Canadians, and that is Canada Pension Plan. So we've come a long way from 1962, because when we first started, we had about 160 employers representing 8,000 members. And now we have over 1,000 employers strong. So we also have over 500,000 members, and that breaks down to about 300,000 active members. So again, like myself, still working and paying into the plan. 188,000 pensioners. So those are the fortunate ones. They crossed that finish line. They're collecting their OMERS pension. And of that 188,000, 245 of them are over the age of 100. So that's amazing when you think about it, because the OMERS pension is a lifetime pension. So you'll never outlive your OMERS pension. And the one stat that I absolutely love on this slide is the age of our oldest member, who's 107 years old and still going strong, I should mention. This member actually retired back in 1980 and has been collecting a pension for over 40 years. So that's what I like to call living the dream, trying to collect that OMERS pension for as long as you possibly can. All right, so about the OMERS pension plan. So when it comes to enrollment in the OMERS pension plan, how it would work is for current employees, they would actually have an option to join as of the participation date. So if you were to enroll into the OMERS pension, then there would be a participation date. So for current employees, they would have an option. So they could decide to enroll as of that participation date. But if they declined, we would just basically need, there's a letter that you would retain, just so that you have proof that you did offer enrollment to that member as long as their employment continues. But for future employees, then it would be a condition of their employment. So anybody in a full-time permanent position, they would have to enroll as of the hire date. Now, when it comes to counselor participation, a council can choose to enroll all council members in the plan, including the head of council or the head of council only. So here, what's really very important is council members can't actually enroll into the pension plan unless the head of council enrolls into the plan as well. Now, we had a pretty big change for us here at OMERS. There was a plan change that was passed and became effective January 1st, 2023, and that's non-full-time expansion. So we at OMERS refer to that as NFT. And what that simply means is prior to January 1st, 2023, any part-time employees looking to enroll into the OMERS pension plan had to satisfy certain requirements. But now, effective January 1st, 2023, just a couple of weeks ago, all part-time employees now can enroll into the OMERS pension plan. So they do have that option to enroll as of January 1st, 2023. Anybody hired in a part-time capacity can now enroll to the OMERS pension plan. So when it comes to how much is it to join into the OMERS pension plan, here are our contribution rates for 2022. And actually, to be honest with you, the contribution rates for this year, 2023, are the same. So they have remained unchanged. And what we do at OMERS is we actually use the CPP earnings limit in order to determine what percentage would come off a potential member's paycheck. So for this year in 2023, for example, that CPP earnings limit, so we call that the YMPE, or the year's maximum pensionable earnings, is actually $66,600. So anybody who earns up to $66,600, the contributions would be 9%, and anything over $66,600 would be at 14.6%. Now, in the OMERS pension plan, we actually have two normal retirement ages. So for civilians, we have normal retirement age 65, and then for uniformed police officers and firefighters, we have normal retirement age 60. So they can actually retire up to 5 years earlier because of the nature of their job. But as you can see here, their contribution rates are slightly higher. So for anyone who's NRA 60, using that threshold again for 2023 of 66,600, it would be 99.2% up until that amount. And anything earnings over 66,600 would be at 15.8%. So again, I know that I had conversations with Tammy prior to this meeting in order to kind of calculate the cost. So this hopefully will allow you to kind of give you an idea of what kind of cost you would be looking at for both employer and employees. And when it comes to calculating that OMERS pension, as I mentioned before, the OMERS pension plan is a defined benefit pension plan. So it's a pension formula that we use to calculate a member's pension at retirement. So this really at a very high level, we would never expect any members to actually do this calculation. We actually have a secure online portal, which is called My OMERS. And once you're enrolled into the OMERS pension plan, members can actually go in and run pension estimates in order to calculate what they would be receiving in retirement. But at a very high level, you can see here, there's two lines to our pension formula. And that's because there's those two benefits. There's your lifetime pension, which you'll receive for as long as you live. And then there's that helping hand, the bridge benefit I referred to earlier on. So I'll break it down line by line. So anyone who retires before the age of 65 is going to receive that line 1. And that line 1 is 2%, and that 2% has your lifetime pension and the bridge benefit built into it. And we multiply that by your credited years of service. So credited years of service is time that you've actually paid into the OMERS pension plan. So let me give everyone an example. If you work 12 months out of the year full-time, then you would receive 1 year of credited service. Now, some people may work part-time, maybe 50% of the time. So at the end of the year, they would receive 0.5 years of credited service. And we multiply all of that by the best 5 earnings. Now, the best 5 earnings simply are your highest 60 consecutive months of earnings. Now, for most of us, our best 5 earnings will probably be our last 5 earnings. But it doesn't necessarily have to be your last 5 years. We have a lot of members who closer to retirement may take a lower paying job just to kind of ease into retirement. So here OMERS uses a sliding scale. Wherever throughout a member's OMERS career, they have their highest 60 consecutive months, that's what we're going to plug into line 1. So a member who retires before age 65 will receive this line 1 up to the age of 65. And then what happens at 65 is that bridge benefit stops. So that helping hand that we pay out to people who retire before age 65, that stops. And again, as I mentioned, that's traditionally because your government sources of income would start at 65. So we're going to subtract line number 2, which is 0.675% multiplied by that credited years of service. So we're simply taking the credited service on line 1 and we're putting it on line 2. And we're going to multiply that by the lesser of your best 5, or 61,840. Now, 61,840, that's the current 5-year average of the CPP earnings limit. And this is really important because line number 2 is a deduction. So we want it to be as small as possible. So again, an example, let's say somebody makes $65,000. The average of their best 5 years is $65,000. Then we're going to use that smaller amount of 61,840. Or if somebody vice versa makes, let's say, $50,000 a year, then we're going to use $50,000. So whichever is smaller, and that's important because line number 2 is a deduction. Now, usually when I do this presentation live in front of an audience, this is where, people get kind of confused. So not to worry, there is an example coming up in a few moments where I'm going to plug in some real live numbers to show you what that might look like. Now, this is a great slide for the visual learners. This puts it all together. So we have a member who's retiring at the age of 55. So let's figure out what this member would receive. So at age 55, this member is going to collect their lifetime pension. So again, that's the line that goes on for as long as you live. And then traditionally at age 65, you can start collecting your CPP. Now, before the age of 65, you can see that there's a lot of blank space there. And that's because OMERS pays you that bridge benefit, that helping hand to get you to age 65. And then, of course, at 65, you have old age security. Now, old age security is based on residency in Canada, and you can only collect it from 65 onwards. So you can collect it at 65 or later. But if we were to change this scenario a little bit, let's say this member decides to collect their CPP at the age of 60. So with CPP, you can actually collect it up to 5 years earlier. But for every year you collect CPP before the age of 65, there is a 7.2% reduction. So if you did want to collect it as early as you possibly could at age 60, that would be 7.2 times 5, a 36% reduction on your CPP. Now, I'll tell everybody also that if you wait until after age 65 to collect CPP, then it does go up every year by 8.4%. Now, the question I get all the time is, Akash, if I collect CPP at 60, do I still get that bridge benefit, that helping hand paid to me to age 65? And the answer is yes. So it makes no difference to OMERS when a member collects their CPP. If you take early retirement, everyone will collect that bridge benefit up to the age of 65. That's the only time it will stop. And then, of course, you have your old age security as well. Of course, your OMERS pension also grows with inflation. So it protects the purchasing power of your OMERS pension. We can all appreciate, especially these days, the cost of gas, bread, milk goes up. So does your OMERS pension. You get a 100% increase in the consumer price index. And we pay up to a maximum of 6% per year. And any excess is carried over to the following year. So this is a great example this year because our retirees for 2023 received an increase of 6%. So the actual increase was 6.51%. So our retirees received the maximum of 6%. And then that difference of 0.51 is carried over into 2024. So whatever the increase is going to be for 2024, we're going to add that 0.51 to it to determine the 2024 increase for our retirees. Now, another plan change that was effective January 1st, 2023 was shared risk indexing. Now, throughout our membership, there's a lot of misinformation about shared risk indexing, but this simply provides the option to the OMERS Sponsors Corporation Board, so the SC board at OMERS. They look after the financial well-being of the plan's health. And they do an annual assessment every year to see how well we're doing. So they have the ability now to reduce future inflation increases on benefits earned after December 31st, 2022. So what this means for our current membership is any service that they have up until December 31st, 2022 will always receive 100% indexing on their pension. But let's say any service after January 1st, 2023, that would be subject to shared risk indexing. Now, we've already announced that we would not be implementing shared risk indexing for 2024 or 2025. So that's also very important to note. Now, when it came to that OMERS pension formula, I've already introduced everybody to credited service. So that's what we actually use to calculate a member's pension, the time that they've actually paid into the plan. But there's also another very important type of service. It's called eligible service. So eligible service is any time that you've worked with an OMERS employer in the past. So the key word here is it has to have been an OMERS employer, but you were not enrolled into the plan. So you weren't making contributions or paying into OMERS. And just to give you some examples, maybe when a member starts working, their contract or part-time, or maybe way back when as a summer student, they worked as a lifeguard for the city. Those are all examples of eligible service. And why eligible service is so important is when we look at those early retirement factors. So when a member can actually retire with an unreduced pension, so an unreduced pension with no penalty, we use both credited and eligible service to help our members get out of the door sooner. So really very important. Usually we always strongly suggest to members if they do have any eligible service to please contact our member experience team and we'll help them get that service added onto their file. So I've already mentioned in the OMERS pension plan, there's two normal retirement ages. So there's normal retirement age 65 for civilians and normal retirement age 60 for police officers and firefighters. So again, we know that they can retire up to 5 years earlier because of the nature of their job, but they do pay those higher contribution rates. And what this simply means is if you reach your normal retirement age, doesn't matter how many years of service you have, automatically you can collect a pension with no penalty. So that's really very important. Even if you had 5 years of service contributing into an OMERS pension plan and you reached your normal retirement age of 65, you could collect a pension without reduction. Now, how soon can you actually start collecting that monthly pension from OMERS? If your normal retirement age is 65, you have to be at least age 55. And if your normal retirement age is 60, you have to be at least age 50. Now, here are these early retirement factors that we talk so much about. So if you wanted to retire before your normal retirement age with a pension with no reduction, you need to have either 30 years of service or the 90 factor. And the 90 factor is a points-based system. So it's your age plus service. If it equals 90, you're able to retire with no penalty. And the other very important thing is it's one or the other. So whichever you hit first. So if you have 30 years of service, you don't need the 90 factor and vice versa. And if you've reached your normal retirement age, then you don't care about that at all. But that's where we use that eligible service to help you get out of the door sooner. So when we're looking at your 30 years of service or the 90 factor, we're using both eligible and credited service. And if your normal retirement age is 60, it's a little bit different. They still have the 30 years of service or the 85 factor. Now, we can appreciate not everyone is going to have those early retirement factors. So if you did want to retire before your normal retirement age and you didn't have those 30 years of service or the 90 factor, then there is a 5% reduction per year. So what OMERS does is we do a 3-point test. So we actually take a look at how close is someone to their normal retirement age, how close are you to your 90 or 85 factor, or how close are you to your 30 years of service. So here we have Jeanette. So she's a normal retirement age 65. Her current age is 59. And she has 25 years of credited service and 3 years of eligible service. So she's looking to retire. We know that there's going to be a reduction. So here's that 3-point test that OMERS does. We take a look at, again, she's 6 years away from her normal retirement age of 65. She's 3 years away from her 90 factor. So if you take her age, credited service, and eligible service, it equals 87. But she's only 2 years away from her 30-year provision. So if you take her credited service and eligible service, it equals 28. And because that's the smallest of the three, we're going to multiply that by 5%. So 2 times 5%. So Jeanette would have a 10% reduction on her pension if she decided to retire at the age of 59. Now, just to kind of illustrate this further, we have 3 different members, all normal retirement age 65, and we're going to take a look at whether or not they can retire with no penalty. So first is Tony. He's age 65, 10 years of credited service, 0 eligible service. Now, again, usually when I do this live in front of an audience, I can usually catch people with this one. People will say Tony can't retire with no penalty because he only has 10 years of credited service. But remember, Tony has reached his normal retirement age of 65. So it doesn't matter how many years of credited service Tony has, Tony can retire with no penalty. Next, we have Jane. She's 55 years old, 25 years of credited service, 5 years of eligible service. Again, Jane can retire at 55 with no penalty because she has her 30 years of service. So she has 25 years of credited, 5 years of eligible. And you can see that's where that eligible service is so important, because if Jane didn't have those 5 years of eligible service and she wanted to retire at 55 with 25 years credited service, there would be a reduction on her pension, a 25% reduction on her pension. And finally, we have my good friend Joseph, age 63, 23 years credited service, 4 years eligible service. So you may see the trend here. Joseph has the 90 factor, so age plus service. And this is a great illustration of 3 different members who can all retire with no reduction. Now, as I promised, I'm going to show you an example, and we're going to plug in some real live numbers. So we're actually going to use Jane in this example. So here's Jane. She's retiring at the age of 55. Look at how happy she looks. I've actually had people tell me maybe she looks a little confused. And that's because she doesn't quite understand what she's going to receive in retirement. So we're going to bring back that OMERS pension formula. So here again, remember, Jane has 25 years credited service. She has those 5 years of eligible service, so it allows her to retire at 55 with no penalty. And her best 5 earnings, we're going to assume, are $65,000 a year. So from age 55 to 65, so for 10 years, she's going to receive that line 1. And that line 1 is 2% times her 25 years of credited service times $65,000, the average of her best 5 earnings. So every year for 10 years, from age 55 to 65, Jane would be collecting $32,500 annually. Now, we know at 65, the bridge benefit stops. So we have to again subtract line number 2, which is 0.675% times the 25 years of credited service, times that 61,840. So that's the current 5-year average of that CPP earnings limit. And here you can see it's a good thing that we're not using her salary, because that's higher. So we're using the lesser amount. And that's because line number 2 is a deduction. So at age 65, we're going to subtract $10,436 at age 65. So from 65 onwards, Jane's lifetime pension would be $22,065. So again, this is for as long as she lives. And of course, she has that inflation protection. So that's going to also increase every year by the cost of living. Now, of course, this is just one piece of the puzzle in retirement. We did talk a little bit about CPP and old age security. So you have to remember, this is just the OMERS piece. You'd also have to reach out to Service Canada to find out what you would be receiving from CPP and old age security. And let's not forget any personal savings that you might have. So for a lot of our membership, That could be RRSPs, TFSAs, and even rental properties, for example. So this next slide I actually absolutely love because it shows you the return on investment. So if you see that over 25 years, Jane has paid into the OMERS pension plan, let's assume she's paid in approximately $101,000 in contribution plus interest over her working life. Now, how much would Jane actually receive if she lived to the age of 85? So if you take a look at those numbers, do you think she would receive double that amount? Maybe 3 times that amount? She would actually receive a little over $1.1 million. Now, of course, we don't cut Jane a check for $1.1 million at age 55. That would be nice, but that doesn't happen. So if you remember, from 55 to 65, for 10 years, she's collecting $32,500 a year. So that's $325,000. At 65, that bridge benefit stops. So her lifetime pension to 85 would be another $470,000 approximately. And then we've included a spousal pension because when a member passes away, there are survivor benefits that we're going to talk about. So a spouse on average would collect a spousal pension of about $75,000 a year, $75,000 over 5 years. So that you can take it or leave it. And then there's that annual inflation increase. So averaged out at 1.5% over 30 years, that would be another $238,000. So I'll be honest with everyone, I hope to be like Jane one day and hope to collect much more than I've paid into the plan. All right, now we're going to quickly talk about a couple of ways where you can actually maximize your OMERS pension. So I'm sure everyone loves the idea of more money in retirement. So through OMERS, you can do it in one of two ways. You can either do an interplan transfer, or you can buy back past service. Now, right away, the advantage of doing a transfer in or a buyback, it's going to increase your credited service. So if you remember back to that pension formula, the more credited service you have, the higher your pension will be in retirement. So we'll start off by talking a little bit about interplan transfers. So if in the past you've ever worked for another employer, not OMERS, and you paid into their registered pension plan. So again, the key word there is you have to have paid into a registered pension plan. And when you left that employer, you left the benefit there with them. And now that you work for an OMERS employer, you have the ability to transfer that previous registered pension plan into the OMERS pension plan. Now, OMERS does a calculation because all pension plans are different. Some are better than others. So when we do that calculation, we're going to actually tell you how much the money previously you had paid into that other registered pension plan, how much service that would give you today at OMERS. Now, OMERS is a very generous plan. So I'll give everyone an example. Let's say I had 5 years of service previously with another registered pension plan. OMERS will do that calculation for me, but we may not recognize all 5 of those years. Maybe OMERS only recognizes 3 or 4 of those years. Again, at this point, it's completely up to myself to decide, okay, do I want to transfer that money over? But again, that would give me probably 3 or 4 more years of credited service in the calculation of my pension. And it may also help me hit those early retirement factors so that I can actually retire with no penalty. So it can be any registered pension plan in Canada. So that's really important. It has to be a registered pension plan in Canada. And it can be a defined contribution plan or a defined benefit plan like OMERS. Now, the other option, probably the more popular of the two for a lot of our membership, is buying back past service. Now, buying back past service can be expensive because it is an actuarial cost done in today's dollars. And it's also 100% member paid. So the employer is not paying for any of this. This is 100% paid by the member. And as a general rule of thumb, the longer you wait to purchase that service, the more expensive it keeps on getting. So as you get closer to retirement, as your salary increases, so does that costing. But again, to help our members, we do have a tool. We can actually go into My OMERS, run those pension estimates, And that's really important because you want to perform a cost benefit analysis. So when you run those pension estimates and through MyOmers, we'll actually give you a with and without scenario. So we're actually able to tell you if you did buy back your past service, how much that would increase your OMERS pension at retirement. Now, what are the different types of service you can purchase? So if it's with an OMERS employer, any unpurchased leave periods you've ever taken in the past would be considered under the buyback provision. Employment period during which time you did not contribute to OMERS. So that's really just another fancy way of saying eligible service. So if you think back or remember any time that you might have been working for an OMERS employer where you were contract, maybe part-time as a summer student working for the city, time that you worked but did not pay into the pension plan, that is also falls under the buyback provision, and also any refunded OMERS service. Now, you can also purchase any service that you had with a non-OMERS employer. So again, if in the past you worked for another employer and paid into their registered pension plan, but this time when you left that employer, you took the money out. So that's where it's different from an interplan transfer. Instead of leaving the money there with the other pension plan, you actually took it out. So maybe you took it out in cash, maybe it's sitting in a locked-in retirement account. You can actually purchase that service as long as it occurred after January 1st, 1992. All right, now we're going to touch upon some of the other additional features that would be available to you as an OMERS member. First one I want to mention is the additional voluntary contributions, or AVCs for short. So this is actually the investment side of OMERS. This doesn't have anything to do with that monthly pension that you're going to receive in retirement. This is actually very similar to an RRSP. So it's our version at OMERS of an RRSP. It's only available to OMERS members. And basically that $121 billion in net assets that we have, if you participate in an AVC, the money goes into that pool of money, OMERS invests it, and depending on how well we do, you get a rate of return on your money. So really, this is an opportunity for you on top of your OMERS pension to invest into the OMERS fund. With AVCs, there's low management fees and expenses. And again, as I mentioned, you get to earn the net rate of return that we have. So just to kind of illustrate that, for 2021, our net rate of return was actually 15.7%. And this is actually a great turnaround story for OMERS because back in 2020, we were negatively impacted by the pandemic. So we had a negative rate of return. So this was a great bounce back story for OMERS. But again, remember, we don't measure our success year over year. Our oldest member is 107 years old. So we measure our success in decades. So what's really important to OMERS are those long-term averages. Here you can see the 5, 10, 20-year averages, and we're at about 7 to 8%. So again, only available to OMERS members, but a great opportunity for those that do wish to participate to earn the OMERS net rate of return. So again, very similar to an RRSP. And the other great benefit at OMERS is our survivor benefit. So we have one of the most generous survivor benefits out there. There is a legal order of entitlement that we have to follow. So all registered pension plans in Ontario, we have to follow this legal order of entitlement. And what this usually means, or what this means is, if you were to pass away, first person in line to receive a benefit is going to be an eligible spouse. Second would be any eligible dependent children. Third would be your designated beneficiary. And then the fourth would be the estate. So let's say, just to give you an example, in retirement, you're collecting your OMERS pension, you pass away. First person we're going to look at is if there's an eligible spouse. If there is, then that eligible spouse is entitled to 66 2/3 of a member's lifetime pension. So when we say lifetime pension, that's not including the bridge benefit, but that 66 2/3, that's a monthly pension that would be paid to the spouse immediately and also for as long as the spouse lives. So again, that's a really strong benefit. So the spouse will collect the benefit for as long as the spouse lives. The member will collect a benefit for as long as they live. And upon his passing, their passing, if there's a spouse, the spouse will collect a monthly pension for as long as the spouse lives. So again, very generous and very strong survivor benefits at OMERS. Now let's talk a little bit about our investment approach. So again, I've mentioned already a couple of times that $121 billion in net assets. How do we invest that money? So here on the left-hand side of the screen, you have our asset allocation wheel. So there's two parts to that wheel, and the bottom half are the public investments. So those are the type of investments we can all invest in. So if you go to your bank, you can invest in stocks and bonds. But what's unique to OMERS is the top half of the wheel, the private investments. So you may have heard of Oxford Properties. That's the real estate division of OMERS. We have infrastructure, any government-backed assets such as tunnels, roads, and bridges. And then we have private equity. Those are companies that we saw growth potential in and that we might own, that we might own outright or have a small stake in. And we aim for a 50-50 split between our public and private investments. Now, we've already talked about the rates of returns for 2021. 2022, of course, has come to an end, and we're now actually just calculating our net rate of return for 2022. So that's actually going to be announced at the end of this month. So at the end of February, we will be announcing our net rate of return for 2022. Very important. Now, I also just wanted to take this opportunity to show everyone a couple of our celebrity investments as a part of the OMERS pension plan. So under Oxford Properties, we have the Hudson Yards project. So this is a huge real estate project for OMERS. Back in 2010, we purchased the last 26 acres of undeveloped land in Lower Manhattan, New York. And once this is all completed, it's going to be a mix of commercial, residential space, public parks, and schools. Oxford Properties also owns and operates a lot of the shopping malls in the Greater Toronto area. So you may be familiar with Yorkdale Mall, Square One, Upper Canada Mall. And under infrastructure, we have Bruce Power. So that's a nuclear power plant located in Kincardine, Ontario. Generates approximately a third of the electricity for the province of Ontario. But even though OMERS is a pension plan in the province of Ontario, I just wanted to show you our investments span the globe. So we also have investments in the London City Airport and also the Port of Melbourne in Australia. So really, we are globally diversified when it comes to our investments. Under our private investing portfolio, we have Premise Health, we have Touch Bistro, we have League, and the one that I just wanted to point out is also Hopper. Anybody looking to book a vacation in the near future, this is a great app to download because it actually uses algorithms to kind of figure out when's the best time for you to book your vacation at the lowest price. So again, just one of many OMERS investments. If you did want to find out more, all of this information can actually be found on our website at omers.com. We're almost at the end. Another great resource or tool, as I mentioned, for members of the OMERS pension plan, we have My OMERS. I've mentioned this already a couple of times this evening. This is really our secure online portal where members can go in, and it's kind of like online banking, but for your pension. So there you can run those pension estimates. You can use the buyback calculator, set up your ABC account, update your contact information. So it's really one-stop shopping for your pension. And that actually brings us to the end of the presentation. I know, again, this wasn't going to go the full hour, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we left enough time at the end for any questions that anybody might have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of you. Here we go. Perfect. So again, I hope you found that helpful. I hope you found that informative. And I'll open it up for any questions that you might have at this point, if there's any.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I am an OMERS recipient, so I'm quite familiar with it.
Good.
And but does any council or anyone have any questions for?
No.
No. I mean,
No, ones I wanted to ask, he answered.
Good.
You did a very good job.
Yeah, no, very informative.
Yeah,
Good. Well, thank you so much. I mean, usually as a part of my job, I'm out on the road and I get to actually travel the great province of Ontario. So it's actually the favorite part of my job. I wish I could have been there live in person to meet you all. But thank you for this opportunity, for allowing me to speak this evening. And if you ever do have any questions, I believe Tammy has all of my information. Please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. So once again, thank you, everyone, counselors. I truly do appreciate it, and have a great rest of the evening.
thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we'll discuss that at a later date when we are doing budget presentation and make a decision. We have a resolution that we, the council, the corporation, and the township of Brunel, Lindau, and Raglan hereby adopts bylaw 2023-08, being the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the February 1st, 2023 special meeting of council. Can I have a mover for that, please?
I can move it.
Councillor Claude, seconded by Councillor Heller. Any discussion on that motion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
That motion is carried. Resolution that this meeting adjourns at 6:48 PM. A mover for that, please. Okay, the urgent.